The greatest medical deceptions. Even you might be a victim. They say medicine is built on truth, on science, on data, on what's been proven beyond doubt. We grow up trusting the white coats, the sterile hospitals, the confident tone of doctors who promise to heal us. When a label says clinically tested, we feel safe. When an expert smiles and says you'll be fine, we believe. Because medicine is supposed to protect us. It's supposed to be pure. But what if the purity we believe in is itself a creation, a story carefully crafted, polished by marketing, repeated until it becomes sacred? What if the pills we take, the tonics we drink, and the treatments we trust are not always made for healing, but for profit? There was a time when doctors prescribed cocaine for exhaustion, heroin for coughs, and cigarettes for asthma. They believed it. Patients believed it. The world believed it. Until truth arrived, too late, too loud, and too painful. The same pattern repeated again and again, a miracle cure, a global obsession, and a quiet catastrophe. The most dangerous lies in medicine were never whispered in secret rooms. They were spoken in daylight, through commercials, textbooks, and trusted faces on television. And we, desperate for hope, swallowed them whole. Because the comfort of certainty is often more addictive than the medicine itself. This story is not about fear. It's about awakening, about learning to question the systems we surrender our bodies to. Because when we stop questioning, we stop owning our health and start renting it from those who profit from our trust. Tonight, you will hear about the pills that healed nothing, the machines that did nothing, and the dreams sold in the language of science. You'll see how history repeats itself, every decade, every new trend, every shiny innovation promising salvation. So as you listen, breathe slowly. Let your mind drift, not into fear, but into awareness. Because sometimes, to truly heal, we must first see the lies we've swallowed and ask the question no one dares to. What if the medicine you trust was never meant to heal you? Headphone if you're ready to uncover the truths hidden behind the mask of modern medicine. Stay with us, subscribe, relax, and let's begin this journey together. 1. The placebo lifestyle. Are you paying for hope, not health? It began on a morning that looked like any other. Pale sunlight creeping through the blinds, the hum of a refrigerator, and the soft clink of glass as Emma lined up her vitamins on the counter. There were 12 pills in total, some bright, some dull, some small enough to slip past the tongue without notice. A ritual as sacred as prayer. She poured herself a green smoothie thick with spinach, chia seeds, and something called cell rejuvenation powder. The label promised clarity, focus, and energy. She didn't taste the difference anymore. She just believed it was working. Every morning began like this. While the world rushed into chaos, Emma began her day with control, or at least the illusion of it. She'd scroll through wellness blogs as she sipped. 10 ways to reset your body, the ultimate detox plan, why you're not drinking enough water for your soul. The words sounded scientific, yet spiritual. They were comforting in the same way religion once was to her grandmother, full of rituals, rules, and a promise of purity. But there was something else, too, a quiet anxiety that hummed beneath the ritual. It whispered, if you skip a day, you'll fall behind. If you stop, you'll get sick. Emma didn't buy pills for pleasure. She bought them for safety. Each capsule was a charm against uncertainty, against the terrifying truth that health was never something anyone could fully control. Across the world, millions live this same story. We call it wellness, but maybe it's worship. Instead of churches, we have juice bars. Instead of prayers, we repeat affirmations. Instead of confession, we post our progress online. And the saints of this new faith are influencers, bodies carved by filters, smiles shaped by marketing, preaching sermons of balance, while selling $60 miracle powders. Once upon a time, the word placebo belonged in laboratories. It was the sugar pill given to half the patients in an experiment, harmless, empty, but powerful in its deception. If the patients believed it worked, their bodies often responded as if it truly did. Scientists called it the placebo effect. Hope, apparently, had chemistry. But now, the placebo has escaped the lab. It's everywhere, bottled, branded, and beautifully marketed. You'll find it in detox teas, in Himalayan salt lamps, in quantum bracelets that promise to align your energy. You'll hear it in the word natural, see it in the color green, feel it in the influencer's soft tone saying, "You deserve this." We don't buy the product. We buy the feeling that we're doing something good for ourselves. The wellness industry has mastered the art of selling reassurance. Its greatest invention isn't any vitamin, supplement, or cleanse. It's the illusion of control. Because deep down, every human fears the same thing: uncertainty. The body is unpredictable. Health can vanish overnight. And that truth is unbearable. So we reach for something to hold on to, a ritual, a bottle, a belief, something that tells us we are safe. Emma didn't know when her ritual began to own her. At first, it was innocent. A friend recommended vitamins for energy, and it helped. Or maybe she only thought it helped. Either way, she felt better, and that was enough. Then came probiotics, adaptogens, collagen boosters, herbal tonics, detox plans. Each one added a layer of protection and dependency. Her bathroom shelf looked like a pharmacy, her wallet looked thinner, and her mind, though filled with wellness, never stopped worrying. Science has long known that belief itself can heal. When you think you're taking medicine, your brain releases chemicals that mimic the effects. Pain lessens, mood lifts, and the body obeys the story it's told. That's the magic and the danger of placebo. The mind is a powerful doctor, but also a dangerous liar. Marketers know this too. Every color, font, and photograph is crafted to trigger trust. Blue means clean. Green means healing. The words clinically proven and natural ingredients dance together like gospel. Even the design of a vitamin bottle, the soft matte finish, the minimal label, the lowercase font, whispers, pure, modern, safe. You don't question purity, you crave it. And so we drink. We swallow. We spend. We call it self-care. But beneath the gentle glow of candles and matcha lattes, there's a machine humming. An empire that feeds on insecurity, selling serenity by the gram. In 2025, the global wellness market surpassed $5 trillion, larger than the pharmaceutical industry. And still, the world has never been more anxious, more sleep-deprived, more disconnected from itself. The irony is sharp enough to cut glass. We chase health through products that profit from our fear of losing it. We trust influencers over doctors, hashtags over data, branding over biology. And yet the placebo lifestyle works, not because it heals, but because it comforts. Belief alone can trigger endorphins, lower stress, even ease pain. The problem isn't that placebo exists. The problem is that we've built a culture on it. We have learned to mistake comfort for cure. The detox tea doesn't cleanse your liver. Your liver was built to cleanse itself. The alkaline water doesn't rebalance your pH. Your body does that every second of every day. The anti-aging serum doesn't stop time. It only slows your fear of it. What we're really buying isn't health. It's permission to stop worrying. Emma once confessed in her journal, "If I stop, I'll lose myself." She didn't realize how true that was. The placebo lifestyle doesn't just trick your body. It rewires your identity. You begin to define yourself not by how you feel, but by how many steps you've taken, how many grams of protein you've consumed, how many supplements line your shelf. Health becomes performance. Wellness becomes proof. But what happens when the proof fades? When the powders stop working, or the promises feel empty? That's when the industry whispers, you need more. A new formula. A better cleanse. A premium version. Hope, now subscription-based. The truth is uncomfortable but liberating. The wellness industry doesn't want you cured. It wants you committed. Just well enough to keep buying, just uncertain enough to stay hooked. It's a business model disguised as self-love. And it thrives because we're all searching for the same thing. Peace inside a body that we can never fully control. Yet within that illusion, there's still something human, even beautiful. The desire to heal is not foolish. It's deeply, achingly human. Maybe that's why the placebo works at all. Because belief is the oldest medicine we have. It's what kept our ancestors praying, our parents hoping, and us buying. So maybe the question isn't whether the placebo lifestyle is a lie. Maybe it's whether we can live without it. Because to let go of it means facing a truth most of us spend our lives avoiding. That no powder, no pill, no ritual can make us invincible. We are fragile. We always have been. And perhaps accepting that, instead of running from it, is the only real cure there's ever been. So tonight, As you look at the bottles lined on your counter, ask yourself, are they protecting you or just protecting your fear? Do you feel healthier or simply reassured? Because maybe the greatest deception isn't in the product at all. It's in the comfort of believing we can buy peace. Headphone in the next chapter, we'll uncover another illusion. One poured into every glass, marketed as purity itself, milk. And the truth behind it may just sour everything you thought you knew about health. 2. The milk deception. Why you don't actually need it every day. It begins with a glass of white silence. Morning light spilling through the kitchen window, a mother's hand lifting a jug, the sound of milk pouring into a bowl of cereal. Smooth, clean, perfect. For generations, that image has been the very definition of health. Strong bones. Growing children. The American promise of purity itself. But what if this symbol of health, this liquid whiteness, was never what we were told it was? What if the milk that nourished us also misled us? For more than a century, milk has been sold not just as a drink, but as a destiny. From the 1920s onward, advertising turned it into a moral code. Drink your milk if you want to grow strong. Milk builds better bodies. Nature's perfect food. Even the government helped shape the myth. School lunch programs required daily milk servings. Nutrition charts placed it at the foundation of every healthy diet. And behind all of this was an empire, an industry powerful enough to make an entire world believe that no breakfast, no childhood, no life was complete without it. Yet the truth, like the aftertaste of spoiled milk, lingers just beneath the surface. In reality, most humans, around 2/3 of the global population, are lactose intolerant. Their bodies stop producing lactase, the enzyme that breaks down milk sugar, after infancy. For them, drinking milk doesn't bring strength. It brings bloating, cramps, nausea. Our biology has always been telling us a quiet truth. Milk is for babies, not adults. But marketing, not medicine, decided otherwise. It began innocently enough. In the early 20th century, milk was genuinely a public health concern, a carrier of tuberculosis, typhoid, and brucellosis before pasteurization became standard. When Louis Pasteur's heat treatment method was widely adopted, milk's image transformed overnight, from dangerous to divine. The dairy industry seized the moment. They funded nutritionists, sponsored research papers, and partnered with schools to anchor milk at the heart of national identity. By the 1930s, "A pint a day keeps the doctor away," echoed through radio ads. After World War II, milk became patriotic. Soldiers returned to posters of strong, smiling children holding glasses of milk under slogans like "Drink milk for strength." The United States Department of Agriculture encouraged daily consumption. And in 1993, the world was introduced to the most famous marketing line in beverage history. Got milk? The campaign was genius, celebrity endorsements, milk mustaches, and an emotional undertone that tied milk to love, family, and identity. It wasn't just selling calcium. It was selling comfort. But what those glossy ads didn't say is that humans are the only species that continues to drink another animal's milk after infancy. They didn't mention that the calcium in milk doesn't guarantee stronger bones. In fact, several large-scale studies, including one from Harvard in 2014, found no evidence that higher milk consumption reduces fracture risk. They didn't mention that in many countries where milk consumption is low, such as Japan, Thailand, or large parts of Africa, rates of osteoporosis are far lower than in high-dairy nations. And still the illusion persisted, because it was convenient. In the 1950s, the dairy industry became one of the most politically protected sectors in the United States. Federal subsidies kept prices stable. School programs mandated milk servings, even when lactose-free alternatives existed. The narrative was too profitable to question. A glass of milk wasn't just nutrition. It was national identity, white and pure as the liquid itself. To reject it was almost un-American. Yet, quietly, cracks began to form. Scientists started asking uncomfortable questions. Nutritionists pointed out that milk's high saturated fat and hormone content might contribute to heart disease, acne, and certain cancers. Environmentalists noted that dairy farming was one of the leading sources of methane emissions, a major driver of climate change. Ethicists questioned the industrial treatment of cows, their forced pregnancies, their calves taken away at birth, their lives reduced to cycles of extraction. The picture of milk began to sour. But here's the strangest part. Even as facts emerged, the myth endured. When the Got Milk campaign began losing traction in the 2010s, the industry simply reinvented its story. Now it wasn't just about strength, it was about tradition, purity, nostalgia. The imagery shifted from athletes and models to families and small farms, sunlit and sincere. It whispered, "This is who we are. This is where we come from." Meanwhile, plant-based milks began to rise, almond, soy, oat, coconut. Sales surged as consumers questioned the old narrative. The dairy giants fought back with lawsuits and lobbying, trying to restrict the word milk to animal products. "They're stealing our identity," one executive declared. But maybe the truth was simpler. Perhaps the identity had never belonged to them in the first place. Science, unbothered by sentiment, continued to peel away the story. The U.S. National Institutes of Health confirmed that about 68% of the global population has limited ability to digest lactose. The World Health Organization recommended moderation, not daily consumption. And studies revealed that high milk intake might even increase mortality risk in some populations, possibly due to oxidative stress caused by galactose, a milk sugar. The very drink once called perfect had become the subject of quiet concern. Yet culture moves slower than evidence. In millions of homes, milk still pours each morning, not from need, but from habit, from comfort, from an echo of childhood. The ritual continues because rituals are powerful. We don't just drink milk, we drink memory. Think about it. Milk isn't really about nutrition. It's about trust, the trust we place in authority, in advertising, in the warm image of a mother's hand pouring something good. It's the same psychological thread that runs through every great medical deception. The promise that something simple and familiar can keep us safe. And maybe that's the heart of it. Milk was never just about calcium. It was about belonging, purity, nostalgia. The industry didn't sell health, it sold innocence. Now, decades later, the truth sits quietly in our kitchens, in cartons labeled organic, natural, grass-fed. Words that sound clean but mean nothing. Words that soothe more than they inform. And somewhere behind them, a whisper remains, the echo of the oldest sales pitch in history. Drink this. It will make you whole. But what if wholeness isn't found in what we consume, but in what we question? Because the greatest deception of all wasn't that milk was good for us. It's that we stopped asking whether it ever needed to be. 3. The mouthwash myth, the clean feeling that lied to you. It starts as quietly as the sound of water running in the morning sink. There's nothing remarkable about it, just another ritual repeated millions of times a day, in bedrooms, hotels, locker rooms, and dorms across the world. A man, barely awake, stares at his reflection through the misted glass of the bathroom mirror. His hair is damp, his toothbrush still wet, and there's a bottle standing beside the faucet, cool, translucent, filled with that familiar mint blue liquid. He unscrews the cap, pours a small measure, and tilts his head back. The sting hits immediately. Alcohol, menthol, eucalyptus, chemicals swirling together in a brief symphony of burn and freshness. He holds it, swishes, counts the seconds, and finally spits. He exhales and looks up. The mirror fogs with his breath. The sting fades, and in its place comes that quiet, convincing illusion, cleanliness. He feels good, refreshed, purified, alive. That sensation, that clean burn, has been marketed for more than a century as proof of health. Pain, we've been taught, means progress. The stronger it burns, the deeper it cleans. The truth, however, hides behind that tingle. That fresh feeling is not a sign of health, but a sensory trick, one that convinces millions of people every morning that destruction feels like purity. The mouthwash industry is worth more than $7.5 billion today, a market built not on need, but on psychology. Its power lies in repetition. The simple ritual of tilt, swish, spit has been repeated for generations until it feels like hygiene itself, inseparable from what it means to be clean. Labels boast of killing 99.9% of germs, words that sound scientific, reassuring, absolute. But not all germs are villains. Inside every healthy mouth lives a complex civilization. More than 700 species of bacteria, fungi, and enzymes that coexist in delicate balance, forming one of the most vital ecosystems in the human body. They protect our gums, help digest food, manage our immune system, and even produce nitric oxide, a molecule essential for regulating blood pressure and blood vessel health. Every time you rinse with an antiseptic mouthwash, you kill them indiscriminately. You sterilize not just the bad, but the good. You wipe out the defenders along with the invaders. You win the war, but lose the balance that kept you alive. In 2019, scientists from the American Heart Association published a study that sent ripples through the dental and cardiovascular worlds. People who used antiseptic mouthwash twice a day were significantly more likely to develop hypertension. The logic was brutally simple. By killing the bacteria that produce nitric oxide, the body loses its natural ability to relax blood vessels. The result is higher blood pressure, more strain on the heart, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. It's not the mouth that suffers first. It's the entire circulatory system. What's worse, many commercial mouthwashes contain up to 25% alcohol. That concentration dries out the oral tissues, damages the mucous membranes, and actually promotes the growth of the very odor-causing bacteria the product claims to eliminate. Researchers at Harvard and King's College London found that overuse of alcohol-based mouthwash correlates with a higher risk of oral cancer and metabolic disorders. But those findings rarely make it onto advertisements because they don't sell. What sells is that quick flash of cold purity, the promise that in 30 seconds you can wash away imperfection. Yet the story of mouthwash didn't begin with medicine. It began with marketing. In the late 1800s, Joseph Lawrence, a Missouri pharmacist, and Jordan Lambert, a chemist, created an antiseptic solution named after Joseph Lister, the father of modern surgical sterilization. Their invention, Listerine, was originally marketed as a floor cleaner and wound disinfectant. It was harsh, bitter, and entirely unsuited for daily use. But in 1914, when sales began to stagnate, the company decided to pivot. They needed to make people feel sick in order to sell them the cure. So they coined a term, halitosis, a word that sounded medical, serious, scientific. It meant bad breath, something that had never been considered a disease before. Listerine's ads warned that halitosis could ruin your social life, your marriage, your job. One famous slogan read, "Even your best friends won't tell you." The message was elegant in its cruelty. You could be rejected and never even know why. And the cure? Just 30 seconds with Listerine. Between 1920 and 1930, sales skyrocketed by over 400%. What began as a surgical antiseptic had become a daily essential. A new disease had been born, not from a lab, but from a marketing department. That trick, the creation of fear followed by the sale of relief, never died. It simply evolved. Today we see it in wellness ads, detox drinks, whitening strips, supplements. The formula is the same: create anxiety, then sell control. The human brain, wired for survival, responds instinctively. We crave the feeling of certainty. We want to do something, anything, that makes us feel less vulnerable. And so we cling to rituals that mimic care. Mouthwash doesn't just promise health, it promises reassurance. The sting feels like proof. The numbness feels like safety. And yet, what it often delivers is imbalance, dryness, and dependency. Inside your mouth, the story is more delicate and more brutal than marketing would ever admit. The oral microbiome, the community of bacteria that lives on your tongue, cheeks, and gums, is not a battleground but a garden. Some bacteria feed others, creating an intricate network of chemical exchanges. When that balance is destroyed, your body doesn't feel clean, it feels confused. The dryness that follows mouthwash use suppresses saliva, which is your body's natural antibiotic and cleanser. Saliva contains enzymes that neutralize acids, repair enamel, and prevent infection. Without it, your mouth becomes acidic, vulnerable, and inflamed. Ironically, bad breath often gets worse after frequent rinsing, because anaerobic bacteria thrive in the dry, oxygen-deprived environment mouthwash creates. The smell returns stronger, so you rinse again. The cycle repeats. A dependence is born. For decades, dentists have known this. Many quietly recommend alcohol-free mouthwashes, or none at all. But the cultural grip of that minty burn is too strong. The sensation is addictive, not chemically but psychologically. It's the illusion of doing something right. Humans love sensory confirmation. We trust what we can feel more than what we can measure. The sting says, "You're fixing it." The cold says, "You're clean." The truth says otherwise. The problem is not the product itself. Some formulations genuinely help those with gum disease or after oral surgery. But the illusion that mouthwash is a necessary part of daily hygiene. It isn't. Brushing and flossing do more than enough. Your mouth, if left in balance, cleans itself. But balance isn't marketable. Burn is. And so, generation after generation, we pass down the ritual. Fathers teach sons, mothers teach daughters. Rinse, spit, smile. The mirror fogs, the mint bites, the morning feels complete. It's not about health anymore. It's about identity. About belonging to a civilization that equates the scent of chemicals with responsibility. About believing that hygiene can be bottled. In truth, the mouthwash myth is a mirror of our times. We've become a species obsessed with sterilization, terrified of the natural. We scrub, sanitize, disinfect, rinse. We destroy the invisible worlds that coexist with us because we mistake them for threats. We forget that our survival has always depended on cooperation with the microscopic. The bacteria in our mouths, our guts, our skin, they are not intruders. They are citizens of the same fragile ecosystem we inhabit. When we wage war on them, we wage war on ourselves. Somewhere tonight, a teenager stands before a mirror before a first date, swishing nervously, believing that freshness equals worth. A businessman gargles before a meeting, mistaking mint for confidence. A woman in a hospital recovery room rinses because it's habit, not knowing her mouth is already trying to heal itself. They all share the same quiet faith, that something artificial can make them more human. But health doesn't come from annihilation. It comes from harmony. The mouthwash myth, like so many medical deceptions before it, thrives on our discomfort with uncertainty. It gives us an easy story to believe, that clean equals good, that burn equals better. But real health doesn't always feel clean. Healing is messy. Balance is quiet. Nature rarely tingles. The tragedy is that this myth could have been harmless, if not for how deeply it reshaped our relationship with our own biology. We no longer trust what's natural. We no longer listen to what our bodies whisper. We want results we can taste. We want health to feel like impact, not patience. And so we keep rinsing. Science, when stripped of marketing, paints a gentler picture. Alcohol-free mouthwash, used occasionally, can help reduce plaque. But used daily, especially with alcohol-based formulas, it erodes the very barrier that evolution built to protect us. It's like burning a forest to kill a weed. You might win the battle, but you lose the world that made the forest grow. Every product that promises instant cleanliness shares the same root deception, that health can be simplified into sensation, that a good feeling equals a good outcome. But life isn't that linear. The body's truth lives in nuance, in subtle balances and contradictions. The burn that comforts you may be the same burn that weakens you. The silence that feels empty may be the body healing itself. Somewhere, perhaps right now, a man stands before a mirror, his reflection hazy with steam. He rinses, spits, wipes his mouth, and smiles faintly. He feels ready, clean, strong, in control. He has no idea that inside his mouth, an invisible ecosystem has just been razed to the ground. The bacteria that help regulate his heart, protect his gums, and maintain his blood pressure are gone, washed away in the name of freshness. He doesn't feel their absence. He feels victory. That's the genius of the myth. It doesn't need to be true. It only needs to feel true. Maybe that's the quiet tragedy of modern health. We've learned to equate sensation with safety, to trust anything that burns, tingles, or shines. We've built an empire of comfort around our own misunderstanding of biology. And the more disconnected we become from the subtle rhythms of our bodies, the louder the products speak for us. So the next time you reach for that bottle, the next time the mint burns, the cool rush hits, and the mirror fogs, remember that cleanliness is not the same as wellness. Remember that the body's balance doesn't shout, it hums. And remember that sometimes the cleanest feeling of all is not health at all, but the most beautiful lie you've ever believed. 4. The detox delusion, how cleansing became the new obsession. For many people today, the word detox sounds like a promise. It appears on juice bottles, beauty products, teas, supplements, and even meditation apps. It's supposed to mean clean, fresh, and new. People use it when they want to feel like they're taking back control, to flush out whatever modern life has done to their bodies. In grocery stores across the U.S., shelves are filled with drinks labeled detox, cleanse, reset. There are detox smoothies, detox waters, detox vitamins, detox baths, and detox challenges. Social media overflows with influencers promoting 3-day cleanses or detox weeks. It's become a ritual, a way of saying, I'm fixing myself. But when scientists are asked about it, the answer is simple and uncomfortable. The idea that people can detox their bodies with special drinks or diets is not supported by evidence. The body already has an entire system that removes toxins every single day. The liver, for example, breaks down chemicals and waste so they can leave the body safely. The kidneys filter the blood and balance water and minerals. The lungs clear carbon dioxide. The skin helps excrete certain substances through sweat. That's detox, real detox, and it happens constantly without juice, pills, or fasting. So where did the modern idea of detoxing come from? To understand it, we have to go back more than a century. In the late 1800s, people started believing that their intestines were full of poison. A movement called auto-intoxication claimed that waste in the colon released toxins into the blood, causing everything from fatigue to depression. Doctors like John Harvey Kellogg, who also created Kellogg's cereal, built entire clinics around cleansing the bowels. Patients were given enemas, fasting diets, and even electric treatments. It wasn't science, it was fear dressed as medicine. As time went on, that same fear evolved. By the 1970s, cleansing came back as a natural health trend. The famous Master Cleanse diet, made of lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup, promised to flush out toxins. People tried it hoping to lose weight or feel lighter. But the science still hadn't changed. The only thing those cleanses removed was calories, water, and money. In 2015, researchers from the University of British Columbia reviewed 20 popular detox diets. Their conclusion was clear. There is no evidence that commercial detox diets actually eliminate toxins from the body. The authors also warned that some detox programs could cause dehydration, nutrient deficiency, and even liver damage. The U.S. National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, NCCIH, states it even more plainly. There is no credible evidence that detox diets or cleanses remove toxins or improve health. And yet, the detox industry is thriving, worth over $60 billion a year globally. Why? Because detox isn't really about science. It's about emotion. People live busy, overstimulated lives. They eat fast food, work long hours, stare at screens, sleep too little, and feel guilty about it. The idea of detoxing offers emotional relief. It's a story that says, I can still fix myself. I can undo the damage. For a short time, it even feels true. When people go on a detox, they often cut out processed food, alcohol, and sugar. They drink more water, sleep earlier, and focus on their bodies. Of course they feel better, not because of toxins, but because they've stopped overloading themselves. But marketing doesn't tell that part. Instead, companies use vague, scientific-sounding claims. Flush out heavy metals, boost liver function, cleanse at the cellular level. None of these phrases have measurable meaning. They sound technical, but are designed to trigger belief, not understanding. A 2020 survey by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that nearly 60% of Americans have tried some form of detox or cleanse. Most said they did it to feel healthier, even though they weren't sure what toxins they were removing. In other words, people are detoxing from anxiety, not poison. The wellness industry knows this very well. Detox has become a brand, not a medical concept. It sells simplicity in a world that feels complicated. A detox tea costs $25 and promises peace. A gym membership costs more and demands effort. Guess which one sells faster? Even some doctors have joined the movement. Clinics advertise liver detox 4 drips or colon hydrotherapy. These treatments sound modern, but most of them have no proven medical benefit, and some can be dangerous. The American Medical Association has repeatedly warned against colon cleanses and detox infusions. Yet social media keeps the myth alive. Type detox on TikTok and you'll find more than 2 billion views. The videos are bright, aesthetic, and persuasive. People holding bottles, smiling, claiming their bloat disappeared and their skin glowed. Most of them are sponsored. That's the part viewers don't see. Behind every detox post, there's often a product deal. It's not evil, it's marketing. But it blurs the line between health advice and sales pitch. Real detox, the biological kind, is boring. It's the liver working at night, the kidneys doing silent chemistry. It doesn't sparkle, it doesn't photograph well. So the world built a prettier version. The problem is that beauty can be convincing. When people feel tired, bloated, or guilty, they're not just looking for nutrition, they're looking for forgiveness. Detox gives them that. It says, you're not lazy, you're toxic. And that's a comforting lie. Because if you're toxic, you can be cleansed. Guilt becomes hope. Hope becomes profit. Some detox products are harmless, just expensive juice. But others are genuinely risky. Herbal detox teas often contain senna, a laxative that can cause dehydration and dependency. Some supplements include heavy metals or unregulated stimulants. In 2017, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, found several detox capsules contaminated with prescription drugs that weren't listed on their labels. Still, the belief continues. Because belief feels better than uncertainty. The human brain loves the idea of purity, of starting fresh. That's why detox feels satisfying even when it's meaningless. It's a ritual that fits modern times, quick, personal, emotional. But there's a hidden cost. When people treat their bodies as something dirty, they start to distrust themselves. Food becomes moralized, good or bad, pure or impure. Health becomes performance. Rest becomes indulgence. In that way, detox culture isn't just a scam. It's a symptom of how disconnected people have become from their own bodies. The truth is less dramatic but more freeing. You don't need to cleanse yourself. You need to care for yourself. Drink water because you're thirsty, not because a brand told you to. Eat vegetables because they feed you, not because they detox you. Sleep, stretch, breathe, walk. That's what real healing looks like. Science can't compete with stories, but stories can change. More doctors, nutritionists, and educators are now speaking out. They're trying to replace detox with a better word, balance. Balance isn't exciting, but it's real. It means trusting your body's intelligence instead of doubting it. It means understanding that health is a process, not a punishment. The idea of detoxing isn't going away anytime soon. It speaks too directly to something human, the desire to start over. But maybe people don't need to erase their lives to feel clean. Maybe they just need to slow down, eat better, and forgive themselves for being human. 5. The Opioid Playbook, Pain, Profit, and the Perfect Lie. In the late 1990s, a new kind of painkiller hit American pharmacies. It came in a clean white bottle with a confident name, OxyContin. The label said it was strong enough for cancer pain, but safe for daily use. Doctors were told it was virtually non-addictive. That phrase, virtually non-addictive, changed everything. For people living with chronic pain, the pill sounded like a miracle. For pharmaceutical companies, it sounded like gold. By 2000, OxyContin prescriptions had multiplied across the United States. Sales reps visited doctors with free samples, glossy brochures, and meals at high-end restaurants. The drug's maker, Purdue Pharma, funded pain education programs that taught doctors to prescribe opioids more often. It was presented as compassion, modern medicine finally taking pain seriously. But it wasn't compassion. It was marketing. Inside Purdue's training materials, sales teams were given something called the playbook. It outlined exactly how to talk to doctors, how to overcome hesitation, and how to reframe addiction. If a doctor mentioned the risk of dependency, reps were told to say, "Addiction is extremely rare." If a patient showed signs of abuse, reps were told to call it pseudo-addiction, meaning they just needed more of the drug. More pills, more profit. By 2003, OxyContin had brought in over $2 billion a year. At the same time, Overdose deaths were climbing quietly, unnoticed by the people who made the product. In small towns, family doctors were writing thousands of opioid prescriptions a year. Pharmacies became pipelines. It didn't happen overnight. It spread like a shadow, slow, systematic, invisible at first. The pills were easy to trust. They came from doctors, not dealers. They were FDA approved, wrapped in sterile packaging. They didn't smell like crime. They smelled like hope. But the chemistry of opioids doesn't care about packaging. Whether it's morphine, heroin, or OxyContin, the same molecule binds to the same receptors in the brain. It dulls pain, slows breathing, and creates a wave of calm, a chemical whisper saying, "You're safe now." The brain believes it, and then it wants more. By the mid-2000s, the illusion was cracking. Emergency rooms filled with overdoses. Families found relatives unconscious in bedrooms. Rural counties began losing entire generations. In West Virginia, one small town of 3,000 people received over 20 million pain pills in a single decade. Still, Purdue's marketing continued. Executives claimed the crisis came from abusers, not their medicine. They insisted that if the pills were taken as prescribed, they were safe. That sentence became a shield, one that protected the company long enough to make billions more. In 2007, Purdue Pharma and 3 of its executives pleaded guilty to criminal charges for misleading doctors and the public about OxyContin's risk. They paid $600 million in fines. But by then, more than 200,000 Americans had already died from prescription opioid overdoses. And that was just the first wave. As regulation tightened and prescriptions became harder to get, addiction didn't disappear, it adapted. People turned to cheaper, stronger alternatives, heroin, then fentanyl. Fentanyl, 50 times more powerful than heroin, now kills more than 70,000 Americans every year. What began as a lie about safety turned into one of the worst drug crises in modern history. But the deeper story isn't only about a company. It's about a system that wanted simple answers to complex pain. Doctors were trained to treat pain as a vital sign, something to be eliminated completely. Patients were told that no one should suffer. And the drug industry provided the easy solution, a pill for everything. It was the perfect equation. Pain equals demand. Demand equals profit. Profit demands denial. The playbook worked, until it didn't. In 2019, as public outrage grew, Purdue filed for bankruptcy. The Sackler family, owners of the company, agreed to pay billions in settlements. But money can't measure the damage. Addiction doesn't end when a company collapses. Today, opioids still kill more Americans each year than car crashes. Over 2 million people in the U.S. are currently addicted. In rural towns, babies are born in withdrawal. In cities, fentanyl has replaced heroin as the dominant street drug. The epidemic has no single villain and no single cure. Yet the patterns continue. Other pharmaceutical companies now promote new pain solutions, slightly different drugs with familiar promises. Safe, non-addictive, controlled release. The language has changed, but the psychology hasn't. Every generation gets its own version of the same lie. That comfort can be prescribed, that suffering has a shortcut. And maybe that's the hardest truth in all this. Because pain, both physical and emotional, is something everyone wants to escape. When medicine offers relief, it's hard to ask questions. It's easy to trust, easy to hope. The opioid crisis didn't start with evil intentions. It started with ordinary people, doctors, patients, parents, trying to do the right thing in a system built to reward profit over patience. When people talk about addiction, they often picture chaos, dark alleys, bad choices. But most opioid addiction began in bright rooms, under fluorescent lights, with a doctor's signature. That's what makes it different. That's what makes it terrifying. Now, decades later, the damage still echoes. There are towns where nearly every family has lost someone. There are children growing up without parents, parents burying children, and communities rebuilding one recovery meeting at a time. What's left isn't just statistics, it's silence. The kind of silence that fills a home after sirens fade. The kind that settles in a doctor's office when trust is gone. And maybe that's where this story really ends. Not in anger, not in blame, but in a quiet reckoning. Because behind every headline about the opioid epidemic, there's still the same question medicine has always faced. How far will we go to avoid pain? And what do we lose when we stop listening to it? 6. Thalidomide, the safe drug that destroyed generations. The babies started coming in around 1959. Doctors noticed first, quiet glances exchanged in delivery rooms. Tiny bodies, born too soon or too strangely. Some with arms that looked unfinished, hands like petals attached too close to the shoulders. Some with no ears, no legs. Some born silent. At first, no one knew what to call it. They called it fate, bad luck, God's will. But in one hospital in Hamburg, a nurse began to keep count, and the number kept rising. Across the country, women were celebrating something else entirely, a small, pale pill called thalidomide. Advertised as the modern answer to morning sickness, it was sold over the counter in Germany, Britain, Australia, and nearly 50 other countries. The ads showed elegant women sipping tea, smiling with the soft exhaustion of motherhood. The message was simple: you can feel better without risk. That was the word, safe. It was the word that made people stop asking questions. By 1960, thalidomide was everywhere. It was in nightstands, purses, bathroom cabinets. Doctors recommended it freely, a gentle sedative, ideal for pregnancy. Chemie Grünenthal, the West German company behind the drug, promoted it as so mild that even an overdose wouldn't hurt. But behind the glossy confidence, something was terribly wrong. Reports began trickling in from pediatric wards: malformed limbs, missing organs, babies that couldn't breathe. The pattern was too strange, too consistent to ignore. In 1961, a German pediatrician named Dr. Wittekind Lenz began connecting the dots. Around the same time, an Australian obstetrician, Dr. William McBride, noticed the same link. Mothers of these babies, almost without exception, had taken thalidomide early in pregnancy. They raised the alarm, but no one wanted to hear it. Pharmaceutical companies had too much at stake. Sales were booming. Letters were sent to Chemie Grünenthal, urging them to pull the drug, but the company dismissed the evidence, claiming no scientific proof. By the time the drug was withdrawn in late 1961, it had been used by tens of thousands of pregnant women. The result was one of the greatest medical tragedies of the 20th century. Over 10,000 babies born with severe birth defects, and nearly half of them died within the first year of life. For the survivors, life was not kind. They learned to write with feet, to eat with hooks, to navigate a world not built for them. They grew up carrying a label that wasn't theirs, thalidomide child. And yet, none of them were supposed to exist. Thalidomide had been marketed as one of the safest drugs ever made. It was sold without prescription. It had been tested, but only on mice, never on pregnant animals or developing embryos. Regulators didn't require it. The idea that a drug could cross the placenta and harm a fetus was barely understood at the time. Before thalidomide, there were no laws demanding proof that a drug was safe for pregnancy. There were no warning labels, no trials, no questions. Thalidomide changed all that. But before reform came accountability, or what passed for it. In the United States, thalidomide was almost approved. The American distributor, Richardson Merrill, had already sent out 2.5 million sample tablets to doctors. But inside the FDA, one reviewer refused to sign the paperwork. Her name was Dr. Frances Kelsey. She was cautious, meticulous, and unimpressed by the company's data. She asked for more studies. She wanted proof. While executives called her unreasonable, she waited. Her patience saved an entire country. The drug was never approved in the U.S. When the full scope of the disaster became clear in 1962, the outrage was immediate. Protests erupted in Europe. Lawsuits piled up. And for the first time, the public began asking hard questions about the relationship between science, profit, and trust. That same year, the U.S. passed the Kefauver-Harris Amendment, making it illegal to sell any drug without proven safety and efficacy. Clinical trials became mandatory. Pregnancy warnings became standard. It was a turning point, born from tragedy. Still, for the families, justice came slowly, if at all. Many parents were told their children's conditions were genetic. Some were advised to institutionalize them. Compensation was minimal, and silence was expected. For decades, the victims were largely invisible. It wasn't until 2012, more than 50 years later, that Chemi Grunenthal issued a formal apology. The CEO stood before a small group of survivors and said the company was sorry for the long silence. One survivor replied quietly, "We didn't need your words. We needed your honesty." Today, around 5,000 thalidomide survivors are still alive, scattered across Europe, Australia, Japan, and Canada. Many suffer chronic pain, joint damage, and spinal issues from a lifetime of adapting to missing limbs. And yet, thalidomide itself never truly went away. In the 1990s, researchers discovered it had powerful anti-inflammatory properties. It was reintroduced, cautiously this time, for treating leprosy and multiple myeloma, a form of cancer. Its distribution is now tightly controlled, with mandatory contraception programs and monthly pregnancy tests for women. The irony is staggering. The same drug that once destroyed so many pregnancies now saves lives. But its return also reminds medicine of a simple truth: that science rarely forgets its most useful mistakes. Thalidomide's history continues to influence drug regulation today. Every black box warning, every mandatory trial, every detailed consent form traces back to those lost children. Every pregnant woman who reads "do not use if pregnant" on a label is unknowingly being protected by their legacy. That's the strange afterlife of tragedy. It becomes policy. Still, the lessons it taught are easy to forget. Even now, pharmaceutical companies rush to release new treatments, driven by markets and competition. Each year, dozens of drugs are recalled for side effects that went unnoticed in trials. The pressure to innovate hasn't changed, only the language has. Safe, tested, approved. Words that once comforted now come with a shadow. Because safety, in medicine, isn't a fact. It's a promise that must be proven again and again. And sometimes, it's proven by the people who pay the highest price. There's an old photograph taken in the 1960s. A group of children born with thalidomide stand together, smiling awkwardly for the camera. Their hands are small, their limbs short. But they are laughing, not because they've forgotten, but because they've survived. That picture doesn't show weakness. It shows endurance. And maybe that's where the real story of thalidomide ends. Not in outrage or sorrow, but in the quiet persistence of those who lived. Because history doesn't just remember the people who made the mistake. It remembers the ones who had to live with it. The sugar scam, how the industry blamed fat for its sins. The photograph looked ordinary. A group of middle-aged men sitting around a long table, coffee cups half full, papers scattered. It was Washington, D.C. They were scientists, gathered to solve a national mystery: why so many Americans were dying from heart attacks. In that room, they hoped to find a villain. The charts were grim. In the post-war years, heart disease had become the #1 killer in the United States. Middle-aged men collapsed at their desks, at dinner tables, behind steering wheels. Families were terrified. Newspapers called it the epidemic of prosperity. Someone had to be blamed. The theory that made the most sense at the time came from a charismatic scientist named Ancel Keys. He believed that saturated fat was the culprit, that it raised cholesterol, clogged arteries, and slowly poisoned the modern heart. The idea spread like wildfire. It was simple, visual, and easy to understand. Butter and bacon became the enemy. But not everyone agreed. Some researchers noticed another pattern. People who ate lots of sugar, not fat, had higher rates of diabetes, obesity, and metabolic disease. These scientists tried to warn that sugar, not fat, might be the hidden cause. Their papers were published, their findings ignored. Because while science debated, business decided. In 1965, executives at the Sugar Research Foundation met to discuss a growing problem. Public opinion was turning against sugar. New studies hinted that high sugar intake raised triglycerides, a fat-like substance in the blood linked to heart disease. If the idea took hold, the sugar industry would face its first real threat. So they came up with a plan, not to disprove the science, but to redirect it. They would hire experts to write a review paper blaming fat instead. Documents uncovered decades later revealed the details. The foundation secretly paid 3 Harvard scientists about $50,000 in today's money to publish an article that emphasized fat as the primary dietary risk, while downplaying sugar's role. The article appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1967, one of the most respected journals in the world. The conclusion sounded authoritative. Reducing saturated fat is the key to preventing heart disease. Sugar's name was never mentioned. It was a victory, quiet, elegant, and devastating. The scientific narrative had been rewritten. The world now had a new villain, and it wasn't sweetness. The timing couldn't have been better for the food industry. The 1960s and 70s were the era of convenience food, cereals, yogurts, snacks. When fat became the enemy, manufacturers rushed to create low-fat versions of everything. To make them taste good again, they added sugar. Lots of it. Soon supermarket aisles were filled with boxes labeled fat-free, heart-healthy, doctor recommended. People who wanted to eat right filled their carts with these foods, believing they were saving themselves. But in reality, they were walking straight into a trap. Between 1970 and 2000, the average American's sugar consumption rose by over 30%, while obesity and type 2 diabetes skyrocketed. No one saw the connection. The industry didn't just change science, it changed language. Fat became bad. Sugar became energy. Food companies marketed sweetness as vitality, indulgence, even love. A little sugar, they said, is what makes life sweet. In 2016, researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, uncovered the internal correspondence of the sugar lobby. Letters, contracts, memos, all proving how the industry had influenced not only Harvard, but the National Institutes of Health, the American Heart Association, and even the government's dietary guidelines. One letter from 1965 contained a single chilling line. Our particular interest is in getting favorable coverage of sugar in relation to fat. The plan had worked so well that even after decades, the consequences were still unfolding. By the 1990s, low-fat had become synonymous with healthy. Cereal commercials told children that eating their product was good for the heart. Dietitians promoted margarine over butter, skim milk over whole. But the healthy foods people were eating were often loaded with sugar, disguised under names like corn syrup, maltose, or dextrose. A single serving of fat-free yogurt could contain as much sugar as a candy bar. And the average American was consuming more than 150 pounds of sugar per year. While the public counted fat grams, the real danger was dissolving silently into their bloodstreams. By the early 2000s, science began to catch up. New research linked sugar, especially added sugar and high-fructose corn syrup, to obesity, insulin resistance, liver damage, and heart disease. Dr. Robert Lustig, a pediatric endocrinologist at UCSF, famously called sugar toxic. He explained that it wasn't poison in the traditional sense, but it hijacked the brain's reward system, making people crave more. The more sugar you ate, the hungrier you became. It was a biological trap, engineered by chemistry and fueled by marketing. The World Health Organization would later recommend that less than 10% of daily calories come from added sugar, ideally under 5%, but the average American still consumed nearly double that. Sugar was everywhere, hidden behind dozens of names and friendly colors. Even now, 75% of packaged food in U.S. supermarkets contains added sugar. It's in pasta sauce, bread, salad dressing, energy bars. It's in baby food. It's in places you'd never expect, because sweetness sells. And nothing sells better than the illusion of health. Governments began to respond. Mexico introduced a sugar tax in 2014. Consumption dropped by nearly 10% in the first 2 years. Chile added warning labels on sugary drinks. Some U.S. cities followed, but the industry adapted. No added sugar appeared on products already full of natural sweeteners. Organic cane juice replaced sugar on labels. Natural became the new disguise. The deception evolved, but the motive stayed the same. Behind every policy, every scientific study, every marketing slogan lies a single truth. Sugar is not just a product, it's a system. A network of habits, memories, and comfort that people don't want to give up. Blaming sugar feels like blaming childhood. That's why it's so powerful. The story of sugar isn't about good and evil. It's about how easily truth bends when everyone wants the same answer. Scientists wanted clarity. Governments wanted guidelines. Consumers wanted control. And the sugar industry gave them all three, beautifully packaged. Fat was easy to see. Sugar was invisible. The sugar industry didn't invent desire. It just learned how to feed it. By the time people realized what had happened, the deception was part of culture. Kids grew up associating sweetness with comfort, rewards, celebration. A life without sugar didn't just seem hard, it seemed sad. That's the legacy of a half-century of misdirection. A society that mistakes addiction for tradition. Every spoonful tells a story, not of pleasure, but of persuasion. Today, scientists estimate that 11 million deaths per year worldwide are linked to poor diets, mostly driven by excessive sugar and refined carbohydrates. The numbers are staggering, but the pattern is simple. When food becomes business, health becomes collateral. And yet, the solution isn't to demonize sugar all over again. That would just repeat the mistake. The answer is honesty, the thing that was missing from the start. Because the sugar scam wasn't just about deception. It was about trust. People trusted science. Science trusted funding. And money trusted silence. The result was an entire generation raised on the wrong story. One that made people fear fat while quietly feeding them sweetness. The truth is less dramatic, but more human. We believed it because it was comforting. Because it told us we could have health and pleasure at the same time. Because it felt good to believe that sweetness was harmless. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting. It didn't destroy trust overnight. It eroded it teaspoon by teaspoon. Now, when people read a label that says healthy, they hesitate. When they see fat-free, they wonder. When they taste something sweet, they question what it's costing them. The sugar industry changed more than nutrition. It changed the language of truth itself. And perhaps that's the hardest thing to digest. 7. The sugar scam, how the industry blamed fat for its sins. The photograph looked ordinary. A group of middle-aged men sitting around a long table, coffee cups half full, papers scattered. It was Washington, D.C. They were scientists, gathered to solve a national mystery, why so many Americans were dying from heart attacks. In that room, they hoped to find a villain. The charts were grim. In the post-war years, heart disease had become the #1 killer in the United States. Middle-aged men collapsed at their desks, at dinner tables, behind steering wheels. Families were terrified. Newspapers called it the epidemic of prosperity. Someone had to be blamed. The theory that made the most sense at the time came from a charismatic scientist named Ancel Keys. He believed that saturated fat was the culprit, that it raised cholesterol, clogged arteries, and slowly poisoned the modern heart. The idea spread like wildfire. It was simple, visual, and easy to understand. Butter and bacon became the enemy. But not everyone agreed. Some researchers noticed another pattern. People who ate lots of sugar, not fat, had higher rates of diabetes, obesity, and metabolic disease. These scientists tried to warn that sugar, not fat, might be the hidden cause. Their papers were published, their findings ignored. Because while science debated, business decided. In 1965, executives at the Sugar Research Foundation met to discuss a growing problem. Public opinion was turning against sugar. New studies hinted that high sugar intake raised triglycerides, a fat-like substance in the blood linked to heart disease. If the idea took hold, the sugar industry would face its first real threat. So they came up with a plan, not to disprove the science, but to redirect it. They would hire experts to write a review paper blaming fat instead. Documents uncovered decades later revealed the details. The foundation secretly paid 3 Harvard scientists about $50,000 in today's money to publish an article that emphasized fat as the primary dietary risk, while downplaying sugar's role. The article appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1967, one of the most respected journals in the world. The conclusion sounded authoritative. Reducing saturated fat is the key to preventing heart disease. Sugar's name was never mentioned. It was a victory, quiet, elegant, and devastating. The scientific narrative had been rewritten. The world now had a new villain, and it wasn't sweetness. The timing couldn't have been better for the food industry. The 1960s and 70s were the era of convenience food, cereals, yogurts, snacks. When fat became the enemy, manufacturers rushed to create low-fat versions of everything. To make them taste good again, they added sugar. Lots of it. Soon supermarket aisles were filled with boxes labeled fat-free, heart-healthy, doctor recommended. People who wanted to eat right filled their carts with these foods, believing they were saving themselves. But in reality, they were walking straight into a trap. Between 1970 and 2000, the average American's sugar consumption rose by over 30%, while obesity and type 2 diabetes skyrocketed. No one saw the connection. The industry didn't just change science, it changed language. Fat became bad. Sugar became energy. Food companies marketed sweetness as vitality, indulgence, even love. A little sugar, they said, is what makes life sweet. In 2016, researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, uncovered the internal correspondence of the sugar lobby. Letters, contracts, memos, all proving how the industry had influenced not only Harvard, but the National Institutes of Health, the American Heart Association, and even the government's dietary guidelines. One letter from 1965 contained a single chilling line. Our particular interest is in getting favorable coverage of sugar in relation to fat. The plan had worked so well that even after decades, the consequences were still unfolding. By the 1990s, low-fat had become synonymous with healthy. Cereal commercials told children that eating their product was good for the heart. Dietitians promoted margarine over butter, skim milk over whole. But the healthy foods people were eating were often loaded with sugar, disguised under names like corn syrup, maltose, or dextrose. A single serving of fat-free yogurt could contain as much sugar as a candy bar. And the average American was consuming more than 150 pounds of sugar per year. While the public counted fat grams, the real danger was dissolving silently into their bloodstreams. By the early 2000s, science began to catch up. New research linked sugar, especially added sugar and high-fructose corn syrup, to obesity, insulin resistance, liver damage, and heart disease. Dr. Robert Lustig, a pediatric endocrinologist at UCSF, famously called sugar toxic. He explained that it wasn't poison in the traditional sense, but it hijacked the brain's reward system, making people crave more. The more sugar you ate, the hungrier you became. It was a biological trap, engineered by chemistry and fueled by marketing. The World Health Organization would later recommend that less than 10% of daily calories come from added sugar, ideally under 5%, but the average American still consumed nearly double that. Sugar was everywhere, hidden behind dozens of names and friendly colors. Even now, 75% of packaged food in U.S. supermarkets contains added sugar. It's in pasta sauce, bread, salad dressing, energy bars. It's in baby food. It's in places you'd never expect, because sweetness sells. And nothing sells better than the illusion of health. Governments began to respond. Mexico introduced a sugar tax in 2014. Consumption dropped by nearly 10% in the first 2 years. Chile added warning labels on sugary drinks. Some U.S. cities followed, but the industry adapted. No added sugar appeared on products already full of natural sweeteners. Organic cane juice replaced sugar on labels. Natural became the new disguise. The deception evolved, but the motive stayed the same. Behind every policy, every scientific study, every marketing slogan lies a single truth. Sugar is not just a product, it's a system. A network of habits, memories, and comfort that people don't want to give up. Blaming sugar feels like blaming childhood. That's why it's so powerful. The story of sugar isn't about good and evil. It's about how easily truth bends when everyone wants the same answer. Scientists wanted clarity. Governments wanted guidelines. Consumers wanted control. And the sugar industry gave them all three, beautifully packaged. Fat was easy to see. Sugar was invisible. The sugar industry didn't invent desire. It just learned how to feed it. By the time people realized what had happened, the deception was part of culture. Kids grew up associating sweetness with comfort, rewards, celebration. A life without sugar didn't just seem hard, it seemed sad. That's the legacy of a half-century of misdirection. A society that mistakes addiction for tradition. Every spoonful tells a story, not of pleasure, but of persuasion. Today, scientists estimate that 11 million deaths per year worldwide are linked to poor diets, mostly driven by excessive sugar and refined carbohydrates. The numbers are staggering, But the pattern is simple. When food becomes business, health becomes collateral. And yet, the solution isn't to demonize sugar all over again. That would just repeat the mistake. The answer is honesty, the thing that was missing from the start. Because the sugar scam wasn't just about deception. It was about trust. People trusted science. Science trusted funding. And money trusted silence. The result was an entire generation raised on the wrong story. One that made people fear fat while quietly feeding them sweetness. The truth is less dramatic, but more human. We believed it because it was comforting. Because it told us we could have health and pleasure at the same time. Because it felt good to believe that sweetness was harmless. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting. It didn't destroy trust overnight. It eroded it teaspoon by teaspoon. Now, when people read a label that says healthy, they hesitate. When they see fat-free, they wonder. When they taste something sweet, they question what it's costing them. The sugar industry changed more than nutrition. It changed the language of truth itself. And perhaps that's the hardest thing to digest. 8. The vitamin illusion, the multi-billion-dollar lie you swallow daily. Every morning, across millions of kitchens, the ritual is the same. A hand reaches for a bottle, the rattle of capsules fills the air, and 1 or 2 bright pills roll onto the palm. They sparkle faintly in the light, yellow, orange, green. Then they disappear, swallowed with a sip of water and a sense of virtue. Taking my vitamins, people say, as if it were a small act of goodness. It feels responsible, modern, adult. A little shield against the chaos of life. But what if that simple ritual, one that billions of people practice, is built on a misunderstanding so deep that even doctors once believed it? Vitamins, once hailed as miracles, have become one of the most profitable illusions in modern health. The story began over a century ago, with the best intentions. In the early 1900s, scientists discovered that certain mysterious micronutrients could prevent deadly diseases. Lack of vitamin C caused scurvy. Lack of vitamin D caused rickets. Lack of vitamin B1 led to beriberi. It was revolutionary. For the first time, humanity realized that tiny molecules could decide between sickness and survival. The discovery saved millions of lives and changed medicine forever. But somewhere along the way, the miracle turned into marketing. By the mid-20th century, vitamin deficiency was no longer a widespread threat in developed countries. Food was fortified, diets were more diverse. Yet the supplement industry was just getting started. Pharmaceutical companies saw an opportunity, not to cure disease, but to sell reassurance. And reassurance sold beautifully. In 1941, the U.S. government introduced the first recommended dietary allowances, RDAs, outlining how much of each vitamin people needed. The numbers were small, just enough to prevent deficiency. But advertisers turned those numbers into slogans. More is better. Soon, vitamins weren't medicine. They were lifestyle. The message was seductive. Vitamins gave energy, strengthened immunity, improved skin, slowed aging, sharpened memory, boosted happiness. People began taking them for reasons no scientist had ever tested. By the 1970s, a new celebrity entered the scene, Linus Pauling, a 2-time Nobel Prize winner. In his later years, Pauling became obsessed with the idea that high doses of vitamin C could prevent colds and even cancer. He wrote books, gave interviews, and inspired millions. There was just one problem. The science didn't agree. Decades of studies, from the National Institutes of Health, Harvard Medical School, and Cochrane database, found no evidence that megadoses of vitamin C prevent illness. At best, they might shorten a cold by a few hours. At worst, they could cause kidney stones or digestive issues. But Pauling's influence had already changed culture. Vitamin C sales soared. Then came vitamin E, vitamin D, multivitamins, antioxidants. Each promised more energy, longer life, better everything. The industry exploded. By 2023, the global supplement market was worth over $170 billion, with Americans spending more than $30 billion each year on vitamins and dietary supplements. Over half of all U.S. adults take at least one daily. Yet when researchers examined the results, the picture was surprisingly consistent. For most healthy people, supplements made little to no difference. A massive 2018 analysis published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology reviewed 179 trials involving over 2 million participants. The conclusion: multivitamins did not reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, or premature death. Harvard Health put it bluntly: if you eat a balanced diet, you probably don't need supplements. You're just making expensive urine. The truth is less glamorous than the ads suggest. Vitamins are essential, but in microscopic amounts. Too little, and you get sick. Too much, and you can also get sick. Vitamin A toxicity can cause liver damage. Too much vitamin D leads to calcium buildup in the blood. Excess vitamin E increases bleeding risk. Nature designed balance. Industry sold excess. And people bought it, not because they were foolish, but because they were afraid. Afraid of aging, of weakness, of not doing enough to stay alive. The supplement industry understands that fear better than anyone. The labels speak its language. Immune support, anti-aging, energy boost, cellular protection. The phrasing feels scientific, but it's carefully vague. These products don't need FDA approval as drugs. They're classified as dietary supplements, a legal loophole that requires far less testing. That loophole traces back to 1994, when the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, DSHEA, was passed in the U.S. It gave supplement companies the freedom to market almost anything, as long as they added one small disclaimer. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It's the fine print most people never read. And so, modern consumers live in a strange paradox. They trust vitamins more than pharmaceuticals, yet vitamins are far less regulated. They feel natural, therefore safe, even when overdoses and contamination scandals say otherwise. In 2015, a New York investigation found that 4 major retailers, including Walmart and GNC, were selling supplements that contain no active ingredients, or worse, contaminants like rice powder and houseplants. The bottles looked identical. The trust was identical. The difference was invisible. The deeper irony is that vitamins do work when they're needed. Pregnant women need folic acid to prevent birth defects. People with anemia need iron. Those living in low sunlight areas may need vitamin D. But these are specific, evidence-based uses, not lifestyle accessories. Yet most advertising doesn't sell vitamins as medicine. It sells them as hope. Hope in the form of a pill feels simple. It's controllable. It fits into a morning routine. You can't eat perfectly every day, but you can swallow a capsule and feel like you tried. That's why the illusion persists. Not because it's a lie, but because it's comforting. People aren't buying vitamins. They're buying permission to believe they're doing something right. It's the same psychology that drives detox teas, superfoods, immune shots. Each one tells us we can outsmart biology, that with the right product, the right pill, we can control what scares us most, uncertainty. But health doesn't work like that. It's messy, slow, and often boring. It depends more on sleep, movement, and diet than on any tablet. And that truth isn't easy to sell. So every morning, the ritual continues. Bottles open. Capsules rattle. Water swallows the illusion. And for a brief second, people feel better. Not because the vitamins are fixing them, but because they feel they're taking control. That feeling is real. But the effect, for most, isn't. Maybe that's why the vitamin industry keeps growing. It doesn't sell results. It sells relief. Real medicine must prove itself. Supplements only need to sound convincing. After more than a century of progress, the world has come full circle, back to faith-based health. The labels have changed, but the belief remains the same. That salvation comes in a small bottle. The truth is more ordinary, and far harder to swallow. For most of us, the real cure is already on our plates. And maybe the healthiest thing we could do tomorrow morning is not to take another pill, but to pause and ask what it was we were really trying to fix. 9. Weight loss deceptions, pills, parasites, and poisonous promises. It usually starts with a mirror. Someone stands there, a young woman, a middle-aged man, a teenager. The reflection looks heavier than they remember. The jawline softer, the stomach rounder, the eyes a little tired. In that moment, something shifts. The thought is quiet, almost embarrassed. I need to lose weight. That thought has built an empire. Every year, billions of dollars are spent chasing thinness. Pills, teas, powders, injections, surgeries, apps, promises. It's one of the few industries that thrives on failure because the more people try, the more they return. The global weight loss market is worth over $250 billion, larger than the GDP of some countries. And yet, obesity rates have never been higher. How can an industry built to solve a problem grow richer the worse that problem gets? The answer lies in the deception. Not one single lie, but a system of them, layered and evolving, always adapting to what people most want to hear. The first great deception began in the early 20th century, long before hashtags and influencers. In 1912, a doctor named John D. Kellogg, the same man who made breakfast cereal famous, began selling reducing pills that promised to burn fat without diet or exercise. The pills contained thyroid extract, which sped up metabolism but also caused heart palpitations, anxiety, and in some cases death. Still, people bought them. Because even then, the dream of effortless weight loss was more powerful than fear. By the 1930s, that dream had a new name, DNP, or dinitrophenol, a chemical used in explosives. Scientists discovered it increased metabolism dramatically. It also caused fever, cataracts, organ failure, and sometimes fatal overheating. Despite warnings, it was sold in beauty salons and mail-order catalogs as a miracle slimming drug. The American Medical Association called it too dangerous for human use. By 1938, the FDA banned it. But the market never died. It simply learned to rebrand. Through the 1950s and 60s, amphetamines became the next big promise. Doctors prescribed them widely for weight control. Diet pills that suppressed appetite and gave bursts of energy. They worked for a while. Then people started getting addicted. By the 1970s, entire generations were hooked on prescription speed under names like Dexedrine and Desoxyn. When the government cracked down, the companies pivoted again. Herbal pills, natural teas, fat burners. Each wave used the same formula. Take a scientific word, wrap it in hope, and sell it as control. In the 1990s, the combination drug fen, short for fenfluramine and phentermine, became the most popular weight loss treatment in America. More than 6 million people took it. It was fast, effective, and everywhere. Until patients started developing heart valve disease and pulmonary hypertension. By 1997, the FDA ordered it off the market. Lawsuits followed, costing the manufacturer Wyeth Pharmaceuticals more than $13 billion in settlements. Yet by then, the cycle had already restarted. When one miracle dies, another is born. Today, that miracle has new names: Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, drugs that mimic natural hormones to control appetite. For many people with obesity or diabetes, these medications work genuinely well. But they've also sparked a familiar frenzy. Celebrities flaunting rapid transformations, clinics selling injections without medical supervision, black markets forming online. History is repeating, just dressed in better branding. Because the dream hasn't changed. The dream is still instant results. The deception, however, goes deeper than pills. At its core, the weight loss industry sells emotion, shame, hope, self-worth. Each advertisement begins by wounding you. Are you tired of how you look? Then it offers healing for a price. And it works. A 2018 study by the National Institutes of Health found that 95% of people who lose weight through diets or products regain it within 1 to 5 years. But rather than questioning the system, people blame themselves. They return, convinced the failure was personal, not structural. That's the brilliance of the scam. It turns the victim into its salesperson. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I need the stronger version. Maybe this time it'll work. And while they try again, the industry grows stronger. From detox teas laced with laxatives, to flat tummy supplements promoted by influencers who never used them, to parasite-based diets that actually instruct people to swallow tapeworm eggs. Yes, it's real and deadly. Every decade reinvents the same fantasy, effortless transformation. Even the language is deceptive. Words like cleanse, reset, boost, metabolic support sound scientific but mean nothing measurable. The FDA has issued dozens of warnings to supplement makers for illegal claims, but new ones appear faster than they can be shut down. In 2022 alone, over 700 weight loss supplements were found to contain undeclared or banned pharmaceutical drugs, substances like sibutramine and clenbuterol, which can cause strokes and heart attacks. The bottle may say natural. The contents may say otherwise. And yet, the deception doesn't survive on lies alone. It survives on longing. Because weight is not just biology, it's identity, belonging, love. Society equates thinness with discipline, beauty, success. From fashion to film, from dating apps to job interviews, the message is relentless. To be smaller is to be better. When culture makes thinness a moral virtue, the industry doesn't have to convince you. You'll convince yourself. The result is a constant low-level despair, a collective belief that our bodies are problems to be fixed, not homes to be lived in. That belief feeds everything. The diets, the injections, the guilt, the relapse. And even when people know it's a lie, they still buy the promise, because hope is heavier than reason. The tragedy isn't just the physical damage, though there's plenty of that. There are the heart attacks from unregulated pills, the anxiety from stimulants, the malnutrition from starvation cleanses. But there's also the quiet erosion of self-trust. People forget what hunger feels like when it isn't punished. They forget how to eat without counting, how to move without measuring. A whole generation has learned to confuse self-care with self-control. That's the real weight, the one no scale can measure. Today, the global conversation around obesity has become more nuanced. Doctors acknowledge that genetics, environment, sleep, and stress all play major roles. The simplistic eat less, move more mantra is fading. But the business model hasn't caught up. Social media is flooded with before and after photos. Fitness influencers push affiliate links for supplements. AI-generated ads promise to melt fat in 30 days. The technology changes, the psychology doesn't. Even the new era of prescription weight loss drugs raises questions. Will they be used responsibly? Or will they become just another shortcut? The latest chapter in an old story of desperation and deceit? Time will tell. But for now, the ritual continues. The search bar, the checkout cart, the quiet hope that this time, something will finally work. And maybe it will, for a few weeks, a few pounds. Then the mirror waits again. Somewhere in that reflection lies the truth that the industry never sells. Your worth was never measured in weight. Your body was never broken. The deception wasn't just in the pills. It was in the promise that you needed fixing. And that may be the hardest lie to unlearn. 10. Cocaine and heroin, when the cure became the addiction. In 1885, a young doctor in Vienna stood in his apartment surrounded by bottles and notebooks. His name was Sigmund Freud, and on the table lay a small pile of white powder. He had been experimenting on himself, taking careful notes about the sensations that followed. The rush of clarity, the sudden confidence, the easing of fatigue. He called it a wonderful substance. The world would soon call it cocaine. At that time, cocaine wasn't an underground vice. It was a medical marvel. Pharmacies sold it freely as a stimulant, an anesthetic, even a mood enhancer. Doctors prescribed it for depression, toothaches, and morphine addiction. It was used in tonics, throat sprays, and, most famously, in the original formula for Coca-Cola, mixed with wine or caffeine to create energy for the mind and body. It wasn't considered dangerous. It was considered modern. In 1886, the Parke-Davis Company, one of the largest drug manufacturers in the United States, proudly advertised cocaine, used by physicians and theologians as a cure for all nervous exhaustion. They even sold kits containing needles, vials, and instruction manuals for home use. The line between medicine and temptation had never been thinner. By the turn of the 20th century, cocaine was everywhere, in pharmacies, on street corners, in homes. Even Sherlock Holmes, the fictional detective, injected it to stimulate his mind. It symbolized brilliance, focus, control. But behind that glamour, something darker was taking root. Doctors began noticing that patients who used cocaine regularly became restless, paranoid, desperate for more. They experienced hallucinations, tremors, psychosis. The same miracle that promised freedom from exhaustion now chained its users to craving. By 1910, reports of cocaine addiction filled medical journals. Yet the substance remained legal. There were no warning labels, no regulations. It took the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act of 1914 to finally classify cocaine and opiates as controlled substances. But while one addiction was being restricted, another was being born. Heroin entered the stage as the new savior. In 1898, the German pharmaceutical company Bayer, the same company that would later make aspirin, introduced a new drug. They called it heroin, from the German heroisch, meaning heroic. It was marketed as a safer, non-addictive substitute for morphine and cough medicine for children. Bayer's advertisements showed smiling mothers giving heroin syrup to their kids for sore throats and insomnia. Doctors praised it as gentle and effective. Hospitals stocked it by the case. It was supposed to cure addiction. Instead, it created one of the deadliest epidemics in human history. Within a decade, physicians realized the mistake. Patients quickly developed tolerance, dependency, withdrawal. Heroin didn't free people from morphine. It merely replaced it with something stronger. By the 1920s, heroin addiction was spreading through cities across Europe and the United States. The American Medical Association withdrew its support, and by 1924, the U.S. government banned all sales. But by then, it was too late. Heroin had already moved underground, and it never left. The irony was brutal. Both cocaine and heroin began as cures. Both were endorsed by the medical establishment. Both were celebrated as breakthroughs of science, and both ended in devastation. It wasn't malicious intent that created the crisis. It was overconfidence, the belief that chemistry could outsmart human nature. Even as the world tried to learn from those mistakes, the pattern repeated. In the mid-20th century, pharmaceutical companies introduced barbiturates, then benzodiazepines, then opioids. Each one claimed to be safer than the last. Each time, addiction followed. The cycle of cure and craving continued, dressed in new packaging, backed by new science, sold with new promises. The story of cocaine and heroin was not an isolated tragedy. It was the first draft of a script the world still performs today. In the early 1900s, the medical community genuinely believed that addiction was a matter of willpower, not chemistry. They thought drugs could be managed. They underestimated how powerfully the brain could adapt. Modern neuroscience has since revealed the mechanism they didn't understand: dopamine. Every addictive drug hijacks the brain's reward system, flooding it with pleasure signals and teaching it that the drug equals survival. Once that pathway forms, choice becomes illusion. By the time doctors realized it, entire societies were already dependent. Cocaine, once sold in pharmacies, became the fuel for gangs and cartels. Heroin, once advertised for children, became the face of the street epidemic. And every new attempt to ban, punish, or purify seemed to push the problem into another corner, but never erase it. By the 1970s, the war on drugs began, a campaign that filled prisons more than it healed communities. The substances changed, but the desperation stayed the same. Today, the world still lives with the descendants of those early mistakes. In 2023, global cocaine production hit an all-time high, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Heroin remains a major driver of overdose deaths, though many users now turn to synthetic opioids like fentanyl, which is 50 times stronger. Each time we think we've conquered addiction, a new form arrives, faster, cheaper, deadlier. And yet, we keep repeating the same question. How did something meant to heal become the thing that harms? The answer isn't only in chemistry. It's in culture, in how we define pain, and how desperate we are to silence it. Freud, who once called cocaine a gift from nature, later watched one of his closest friends destroy himself with the same substance. He wrote, "I believe now that I have done a terrible thing." Bayer, decades after its heroic medicine was banned, removed every record of heroin from its archives. History has a quiet way of burying its embarrassments, but the bodies remain. The legacy of cocaine and heroin is not just about drugs. It's about the fragile line between healing and hubris. The moment medicine forgets humility, it risks turning relief into ruin. Both substances began with scientists trying to help, trying to understand suffering. What they underestimated was the human hunger for escape, from pain, from sadness, from the ordinary weight of being alive. That hunger doesn't vanish with regulation. It finds new chemistry. And so, the story continues, not in apothecaries and glass bottles, but in clinics and street corners, in prescriptions and powders, in the quiet deals people make with themselves every day. Because the truth is simple and tragic. The human desire to feel better will always outrun the science meant to save it. And somewhere between a cure and a craving, we keep losing the line. 11. The mind control experiments, when medicine became a weapon. The room was quiet, except for the hum of a tape recorder. A woman sat in a hospital bed, her wrists bound loosely by cloth, her eyelids heavy. Electrodes dotted her temples. A doctor in a white coat leaned forward, speaking softly. "Relax," he said. "Just listen to my voice." It was 1957. The hospital was the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, Canada. The woman's name was Linda MacDonald, though in the records she was only patient 17. She had come seeking treatment for anxiety. Nothing extraordinary. What she didn't know was that she was part of one of the most secret medical programs in modern history. Outside her window, the Cold War was tightening its grip. Governments on both sides of the Iron Curtain were terrified, not of bombs, but of minds. The fear wasn't just of being defeated, it was of being controlled. In that climate of paranoia, medicine became the perfect disguise. In the years after World War II, psychology was no longer just a science. It was a battlefield. The CIA, alarmed by reports that Soviet and Chinese interrogators were using brainwashing techniques, launched a top-secret initiative known as MKUltra. Its goal was simple and terrifying: to learn how to control the human mind. The program began in 1953, under the direction of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist described by colleagues as a gentle man with dark curiosity. The experiments were hidden under layers of universities, hospitals, and front organizations. The funding often came disguised as grants for medical research. Doctors who thought they were advancing science were, in fact, helping the CIA test chemical and psychological manipulation. Some of those experiments involved LSD, which was newly discovered and poorly understood. Gottlieb and his team believed it might act as a truth serum, a way to weaken mental defenses during interrogation. Others tested hypnosis, sensory deprivation, sleep therapy, even electroshock at extreme intensities. The common denominator was secrecy. Subjects were rarely informed. Many never even knew they were part of an experiment. Back in Montreal, the psychiatrist leading the project was Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, one of the most respected figures in his field. He had once been president of the American Psychiatric Association. His research was funded by the CIA through a front group called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. Cameron believed he could reprogram the human brain. His idea was to erase pathological memories through massive doses of electroshock, drug-induced comas, and repeated messages, sometimes played thousands of times over loudspeakers. He called the process psychic driving. Patients like Linda came in with mild depression or anxiety and left with no memory of who they were. Some forgot how to walk, talk, or recognize their families. Many never fully recovered. When the program was finally exposed in the 1970s through the Church Committee hearings, it shocked the world. The CIA admitted to destroying most of the MKUltra files in 1973, roughly 80% of all documentation. What survived revealed a network of 80 institutions and hundreds of scientists across the U.S. and Canada. The human cost was immeasurable. For those who lived through it, the details are haunting. In 1953, a U.S. Army biochemist named Frank Olson was secretly dosed with LSD by Gottlieb himself. 9 days later, he fell, or jumped, from a hotel window in New York. His death was ruled a suicide, but decades later, declassified documents suggested it may have been something else. His family spent years searching for the truth, caught between silence and denial. In San Francisco, CIA agents ran brothels under Operation Midnight Climax, where unsuspecting men were drugged with LSD while being observed through one-way mirrors. The goal was to study vulnerability under sexual pressure. The agents often recorded the encounters, laughing, drinking, taking notes. It sounds like fiction, but every word is documented history. The The justification was always the same: national security. But for the people who woke up in hospital beds, or not at all, the line between medicine and torture had vanished. The tragedy of MKUltra is that it began with the same impulse that drives most of science: curiosity, progress, understanding. What corrupted it was fear. The Cold War turned doctors into soldiers, patients into subjects, hospitals into laboratories of control. The irony is that the research produced almost no useful results. LSD proved unpredictable. Hypnosis unreliable. Electroshock erased memory, but not selectively. It wiped everything. The only lasting product of MKUltra was trauma. And perhaps something worse: distrust. When the program was exposed, Americans learned that the very institutions meant to protect them, the medical establishment, the government, had been complicit in violating the most intimate part of being human: the mind itself. The fallout rippled through generations. Laws were rewritten. Ethics boards were created. But for many survivors, no apology could undo what was done. Linda McDonald, the woman in the hospital bed, never regained her memory of the years before her treatment. She later said, "They took my soul. They erased it." The deeper question isn't about the science. It's about the moral blind spot that allowed it. When does healing become control? When does research become cruelty? Those questions didn't die with MKUltra. They linger wherever technology meets psychology, from algorithms that predict behavior to devices that track our emotions. The tools are more sophisticated now, but the temptation remains the same: to shape what people think, feel, believe. The old laboratories have closed, but the experiment continues, in data, in influence, in invisible hands guiding our attention. And just like Linda, we rarely realize it's happening until we wake up and wonder who we've become. Because the most dangerous form of mind control is the one we consent to. The kind that doesn't need drugs, just belief. 12. The fake medical devices that fooled the world. The salesman's voice filled the room like a sermon. His hands moved gracefully, almost theatrically, as he held up the gleaming metal box. "This," he said, "is not just a machine. It's the future of healing." The audience, a mix of farmers, housewives, and desperate patients, leaned forward. A faint hum rose from the device as lights flickered across its dials. "Electric vibrations," he explained, "that tune the body's energy field. No pain, no surgery, no chemicals, only science." The year was 1923. The machine was called the Rife Ray Tube, one of dozens of miracle medical inventions that swept through the early 20th century, promising to cure everything from cancer to tuberculosis with the flip of a switch. In that age of wonder, electricity was new, mysterious, almost divine. People had seen it light cities, power trains, animate the modern world. So when someone claimed it could heal the human body, who were they to doubt? And yet, what began as fascination would become one of medicine's longest and most profitable illusions: the age of fake medical devices. The first wave of such machines appeared in the late 1800s, when science was advancing faster than the public could understand it. Electricity, magnetism, radiation, these forces felt magical. And in that gap between discovery and comprehension, fraud found fertile ground. The electropoise promised to restore vitality through inhaling charged air. The violet ray claimed to rejuvenate nerves with gentle electric arcs. Ads boasted testimonials of miraculous recoveries. "Cured my rheumatism overnight. Restored my youth. Saved my life." Few people realized that most of these devices didn't do anything at all, except make sparks and noise. Doctors warned that many were dangerous, but regulation was weak. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, didn't yet have authority to control medical devices. By the time it did, in the 1930s, the industry had already learned how to adapt, shifting its language, its promises, its look. They stopped calling it magic. They started calling it innovation. In the 1930s, a San Diego engineer named Royal Raymond Rife captured the public's imagination. He claimed to have invented a microscope powerful enough to see living viruses, something no scientist had achieved. He also claimed he could destroy them using frequency resonance, a form of targeted radio waves. Rife's demonstrations were mesmerizing. He dressed like a surgeon, spoke like a physicist, and surrounded himself with blinking machines. Newspapers called him the man who conquered disease. But when real researchers tried to replicate his results, nothing happened. His beam ray couldn't cure cancer or anything else. Still, his followers and investors kept the myth alive for decades. Even now, nearly a century later, Rife machines are still sold online, repackaged as frequency therapy, quantum healing, or bioresonance. Each generation reinvents the same dream. That somewhere, just beyond the reach of medicine, there exists a secret machine that can fix everything. By the 1950s, technology had become almost holy. The atomic age had arrived. Television beamed images into living rooms. The human body was being mapped, probed, scanned. And that's when another device appeared, one that blurred the line between science and belief. It was called the e-meter, invented by Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. The machine looked like a scientific instrument, with wires, dials, and meters, but it measured nothing medically meaningful. Still, Hubbard claimed it could detect emotional blockages and help purify the soul. People believed him. They paid for auditing sessions, holding metal cylinders connected to the e-meter while confessing their fears and traumas. The needle's movements were interpreted as evidence of spiritual sickness. Even after governments questioned its validity, Scientology fought to keep it classified as a religious tool, not a medical one. That argument saved it, and it's still in use today. It was a lesson every scammer learned. When you can't sell science, sell faith dressed as science. The most chilling modern echo of those early hoaxes came a century later, in Silicon Valley. In 2003, a 19-year-old Stanford dropout named Elizabeth Holmes founded a company called Theranos. Her promise was revolutionary, a small device that could run hundreds of blood tests from a single drop of blood. It would make diagnostics faster, cheaper, and accessible to everyone. Holmes wore black turtlenecks, spoke softly like Steve Jobs, and surrounded herself with powerful men, generals, politicians, billionaires. She convinced Walgreens and Safeway to invest. She raised over $700 million. At its peak, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. But behind the sleek glass walls, the miracle machine didn't work. Tests were unreliable, results falsified. Patients were misdiagnosed. Some were told they were healthy when they were not. It wasn't science that kept Theranos alive, it was belief. People wanted to believe that technology could make medicine painless, instant perfect. And once again, the promise of progress blinded everyone to the absence of proof. When the company collapsed in 2018, it wasn't just a business failure. It was a mirror, showing how little had changed since the days of the violet ray and the Rife beam. The fake medical device is not a relic of the past. It's a shapeshifter, following us into every new age. Today, they come as wearables, apps, detox bracelets, magnetic patches, and quantum frequency wands sold online with glossy videos and doctor endorsements that vanish when you check their names. Some claim to cure cancer, others to reverse aging or balance bioenergy. In 2020, the FDA warned about dozens of devices falsely claiming to prevent or treat COVID-19. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission fined multiple companies for selling healing frequency belts that had no measurable effect. And yet people keep buying. Because the sales pitch hasn't changed in 100 years. Science can't help you, but we can. For every fear, there's a device. For every uncertainty, a gadget promising control. It's not just fraud. It's psychology. Somewhere in the middle of all this are ordinary people. The ones who've tried everything else. The ones in pain. A woman with chronic fatigue who's been dismissed by doctors. A father desperate to help his child when medicine has no answers. An old man terrified of dying who just wants another year. They aren't stupid. They're human. And that's what every con artist understands better than most scientists ever did. That hope will always outspend doubt. If there's one thread that connects all these stories, from the crackling electrotherapy boxes of 1900 to the sleek startups of Silicon Valley, it's the same hunger that drives both invention and illusion, the desire to conquer pain. The only difference is honesty. Real medicine begins with uncertainty. Fake medicine begins with certainty. Real doctors say, we don't know yet. Frauds say we know, and it works. And the moment people stop questioning that certainty, They step into the same quiet trap that has existed for more than a century. A glowing box, a steady hum, a promise too good to test. In the end, the fake medical device is not just a machine. It's a story, one that begins with fear, feeds on trust, and ends with silence. Somewhere tonight, in a small clinic or a suburban living room, a device is humming softly. Lights flicker. Someone closes their eyes, believing that healing has begun. And maybe for a moment it feels real. Maybe the lie even helps. Because belief itself can be powerful. But when it replaces truth, it becomes the most dangerous technology of all. 13. Modern myths, detox, superfoods, and the new age of deception. It begins with a morning scroll. Someone opens their phone, maybe you, maybe me, and the feed fills with promise. A glowing smoothie bowl bursting with berries labeled superfoods. A celebrity sipping celery juice claiming it cured inflammation. An influencer smiling in perfect light whispering, "I stopped eating toxins, and it changed my life." It's beautiful, convincing, and everywhere. We live in the golden age of wellness. A trillion-dollar empire built not on illness, but on insecurity. And like every empire before it, it runs on belief. The idea of detox and superfoods feels comforting because it gives chaos a story, a simple narrative that says, your body is dirty, but you can clean it. It's ancient in spirit, modern in branding. The words have changed, but the fear is eternal. Long before Instagram, there were tonics and teas sold by traveling healers. In the 1800s, blood purifiers promised to cleanse the system of impurities. In the 1920s, colon cleanses claimed to remove waste toxins that caused everything from fatigue to depression. The difference now is marketing, faster, flashier, digital. The same story, told through better cameras and brighter smiles. At the heart of these myths lies a misunderstanding of biology. The human body doesn't need detoxing. It already has two of the most sophisticated detox systems on Earth, the liver and the kidneys. They break down toxins every second of every day. When doctors hear someone say, "I need a detox," they know it's a marketing word, not a medical one. The liver doesn't need juice cleanses. It needs hydration and nutrition. The kidneys don't need expensive teas. They need blood flow and balance. As the Harvard Medical School puts it, there's no evidence that detox diets remove toxins from your body. Your organs already do that job perfectly. And yet, the detox industry keeps growing, worth over $60 billion globally in 2024. Because detox isn't selling science. It's selling redemption. Take celery juice, the internet's green miracle. In 2019, it became a worldwide craze after a self-proclaimed medical medium claimed it could heal everything from eczema to chronic illness. Millions joined in, flooding social media with photos and testimonials. But studies showed no unique benefit. Celery is healthy, yes, but not magical. It doesn't flush toxins or reset anything. Still, belief spreads faster than data. That's the new rule of wellness. If it goes viral, it becomes truth. The same goes for superfoods. The term itself isn't scientific, it's marketing. There's no official list, no definition. Blueberries, kale, quinoa, chia seeds, acai, all healthy, all hyped. They're rich in antioxidants, sure, but so are apples, beans, and potatoes, foods far less photogenic. In 2017, a large meta-analysis by The Lancet found that overall diet quality, variety, balance, whole foods, mattered more for longevity than any single ingredient. But variety doesn't sell well. Simplicity does. So we're told there's always one food that saves, one habit that cleanses, one routine that fixes. It's the illusion of control, bottled and branded. Behind every superfood boom, there's an economy quietly expanding. When quinoa became the miracle grain, prices tripled in Peru and Bolivia, making it too expensive for the local farmers who had eaten it for centuries. When avocados were declared heart savers, demand surged so high that deforestation spread across Mexico to keep up. When acai went viral, entire ecosystems in the Amazon shifted toward monoculture. Each trend begins as health and ends as hunger somewhere else. It's not that these foods are bad. It's that their myth grows faster than their truth. The irony is that the science of real nutrition is boring. Eat plants. Move your body. Sleep well. Avoid extremes. It's not sexy, and it doesn't fit on a product label. That's why wellness influencers fill the gap, offering what medicine won't: attention, identity, and aesthetic. They turn food into philosophy. Green juice becomes morality. Clean eating becomes purity. The darker side is subtle but real. People start to fear ordinary food. A 2020 study in Appetite Journal found that the rise of clean eating culture correlates with increased anxiety and eating disorders, particularly among young women. The pursuit of purity becomes its own kind of poison. And then there's the digital side, the algorithms that feed what we already fear. Search how to feel better, and within minutes you'll see ads for detox kits, juice subscriptions, probiotic powders, gut reset programs. Type bloating or low energy, and the internet whispers back, "You're toxic by this." Every click deepens the illusion that wellness can be purchased. But health doesn't come in a link. It comes in habits. What makes modern wellness so powerful is that it borrows the language of science, antioxidants, inflammation, pH balance, while divorcing it from scientific rigor. The result feels factual, even when it's fiction. Terms like alkaline diet or anti-inflammatory smoothie sound technical but have little evidence. Human blood already maintains a stable pH of around 7. No juice can change that. Chronic inflammation is real, but it's treated by balanced nutrition, not by superfood powders. The more complex biology becomes, the simpler the slogans get. Because simplicity sells. Nuance does not. Still, the longing behind it is human. Everyone wants to feel clean, strong, renewed. Everyone wants to believe there's a reset button. That's what makes the wellness myth so enduring. It's not driven by greed alone, but by the ache of people trying to feel better in a world that never stops exhausting them. Modern life is toxic in its own way, not chemically, but emotionally. We are flooded with noise, speed, anxiety. And the promise of detox isn't just about the body. It's about wanting silence, stillness, control. The irony is that what most of us truly need to detox from isn't food, it's fear. In a way, the myth of wellness is the story of faith reinvented for the modern age. Where religion once offered cleansing of the soul, wellness now offers cleansing of the body. Where prayer once gave hope, smoothies do. And like any belief system, it can heal or harm, depending on how much truth we're willing to surrender. Tonight somewhere, someone is drinking a green juice, eyes closed, whispering, "I'm healing." And maybe they are, not because of the juice, but because for a moment they feel peace. That's the part science can't quantify, the power of belief itself. But belief without truth becomes a market. And in that market, health becomes currency and purity becomes product. Maybe one day we'll look back on this era, the hashtags, the powders, the promises, and see it for what it was, a reflection of our hunger not just for health, but for meaning. Until then, the myth will keep evolving, brighter labels, smarter slogans, cleaner lies. Because hope, even when sold by the ounce, will always find a buyer. 14. The hidden truth, why medicine still keeps secrets from you. It often begins in the quietest of places, a doctor's office, a white room, the smell of antiseptic and paperwork. A patient sits across from a physician, searching their eyes for honesty. "Is this treatment safe?" they ask. The doctor pauses, hesitates just a second too long. "We believe it is," they say. And somewhere in that pause lies the shadow that has followed medicine for centuries. The things we don't know, and the things we choose not to say. For all its miracles, antibiotics, vaccines, transplants, AI-driven surgery, medicine has always carried secrets. Some are buried in archives, others in contracts, behind paywalls, or deep within data no one outside the system can see. It's not conspiracy. It's structure. And the truth, as always, is more complicated than comfort allows. Modern medicine runs on information, studies, trials, statistics. Each new drug or treatment is born from research, and each research project produces data. But not all data see the light of day. A 2013 analysis published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that only about half of all clinical trial results are ever published. Negative outcomes, when a drug doesn't work or causes harm, often disappear into silence. It's not that scientists are evil. It's that failure doesn't sell. Pharmaceutical companies invest billions to develop new drugs. When a trial goes badly, the instinct is to protect investors' reputation, market confidence. And so some studies are quietly shelved. Others are rewritten, reframed, or selectively reported. The phenomenon even has a name: publication bias. It means that the science we see, the studies quoted in ads, shared on news, represents only the winners, not the full picture. The consequences are real. In the early 2000s, a class of antidepressants called SSRIs became some of the most prescribed drugs in the world. But internal documents later revealed that companies had downplayed evidence showing they were less effective, and in some cases, increased suicidal thoughts in young people. In 2004, after lawsuits and public outrage, major pharmaceutical firms were forced to release hidden trial data. The revelations changed drug regulations worldwide. But the pattern continued. A 2017 study in BMJ Open found that more than one-third of new drug trials registered with the U.S. government never reported results publicly, even years after completion. Silence, it seems, is as much a part of the medical process as discovery. And then there's the world of conflicts of interest. Medicine is supposed to be objective, data-driven, pure. But reality is human. Doctors attend conferences funded by the same companies whose drugs they prescribe. Researchers receive grants from corporations whose products they're testing. Medical journals depend on advertising revenue from the industry they're meant to scrutinize. A 2018 investigation by ProPublica found that over 60% of U.S. physicians had received some form of payment or gift from pharmaceutical or device companies. Sometimes it's a meal, sometimes a consulting fee, sometimes much more. None of it automatically means corruption. But it does mean influence, subtle, pervasive, often invisible. And when money meets medicine, truth becomes negotiable. Even government agencies, meant to guard public safety, operate within these gray zones. The FDA relies on user fees from pharmaceutical companies for nearly half its drug review budget. The agency is tasked with regulating the same corporations that fund it. Critics call it a conflict of design, a system where watchdog and business partner share the same paycheck. It's not malicious, but it's messy. Because in a world where medical approval means billions, transparency often becomes a liability. Then there's another kind of secrecy, the kind born not from greed, but from protection. Sometimes, doctors don't tell patients everything because they think it will cause harm. They call it therapeutic privilege. Imagine a terminal diagnosis. A physician knows the prognosis is grim. The patient asks, "Will I survive?" The truth might destroy what little hope remains, and sometimes, hope itself is medicine. So the doctor hesitates, softens, changes the subject. In that moment, it's not deception out of profit, but compassion. And yet, it's still a secret. Medicine walks this line daily, between data and humanity, between knowledge and mercy. But not all secrets are personal. Some are systemic. When COVID-19 swept the world, information became a weapon as much as a cure. Governments decided which data to release, which to suppress, which to frame. Vaccine companies competed for speed and market dominance. Online misinformation spread faster than any virus. Behind the scenes, scientists fought to balance truth with trust. How to be transparent about uncertainty without fueling panic. In the rush for answers, corners were cut, mistakes made, lessons learned too late. And somewhere in the noise, faith in science fractured. It wasn't because medicine had failed, but because medicine had become political. A language everyone wanted to speak, but few wanted to understand. The deeper truth is this: medicine isn't a monolith. It's a mosaic of people, brilliant, flawed, overworked, idealistic, afraid. The cardiologist trying to publish inconvenient data and losing funding. The researcher pressured to deliver positive results. The whistleblower in a lab who realizes that honesty might cost her career. They all exist within a system that rewards certainty, not curiosity. Because uncertainty doesn't sell. In 2021, Dr. Peter Doshi, a senior editor at the BMJ, wrote, "The public assumes medical knowledge is complete. But what we know about most drugs is partial, often shaped by commercial and political forces." He wasn't condemning medicine. He was reminding us that science is a living thing, always evolving, always incomplete. That's the part we forget. We want medicine to be omniscient, to deliver perfect answers. But it can't. And when it can't, it hides its doubts behind language, preliminary findings, under further review, statistically insignificant. Words that sound solid, but mean uncertainty wrapped in calm. The irony is that the same system capable of secrecy is also capable of salvation. It's the same machine that hides negative trials, yet produces vaccines in record time. The same bureaucracy that slows cures yet saves lives through caution. Medicine is both cage and key, because its power is built on imperfection. The hidden truth isn't that doctors are lying. It's that the truth itself is fragile, filtered through politics, profit, and human fear. For most patients, the line is simple. We just want honesty. We want to know what works, what doesn't, what's uncertain. But honesty takes time, and medicine today runs on urgency, faster results, faster drugs, faster answers. In that speed, nuance is lost. And so people turn elsewhere, to influencers, to conspiracies, to anyone who promises the simplicity medicine can no longer offer. The irony is painful. The more complex science becomes, the more we crave simple truths. And the fewer simple truths remain. One evening, a young doctor once said to his mentor, "I feel like I'm lying to my patients when I say I know what's best." The older man smiled sadly. "You're not lying," he said. "You're trying. Maybe that's what medicine really is, a profession built on trying, not knowing." So the next time a doctor hesitates before answering, the next time a headline feels too confident, or a new miracle drug appears overnight, remember that behind every claim lies 1,000 uncertainties, and behind every silence, 1,000 fears. Because medicine, for all its brilliance, is still human. And humanity, as always, keeps secrets, not just from others, but from itself. 15. The greatest medical deceptions. Even you might be a victim. It usually begins quietly. Someone wakes up, pours a glass of water, swallows a pill, drinks a supplement, scrolls through a feed filled with wellness ads, and thinks they're doing the right thing. Because that's what we've been told. To trust the label, the expert, the system. Medicine, after all, was supposed to be our greatest triumph, the proof that reason could conquer pain, that progress could outsmart death. And yet, somewhere along the way, that promise blurred. It became harder to tell where healing ended and marketing began. This isn't a story about villains. It's a story about belief and how it can be weaponized. For more than a century, the world has been shaped by medical miracles that weren't. Each era had its own deception, sometimes born from greed, sometimes from ignorance, sometimes from the blind faith that science could save us from ourselves. In the early 1900s, doctors prescribed heroin and cocaine as medicine. In the 1950s, pregnant women took thalidomide for morning sickness, only to give birth to children without limbs. For decades, tobacco was promoted by physicians as good for digestion. In the 1970s, sugar companies paid scientists to blame fat for heart disease. In the 1990s, pharmaceutical giants pushed opioids as non-addictive, igniting an epidemic that still kills hundreds of Americans every day. Each lie was dressed as progress. Each lie began with a promise to heal. But here's the unsettling part. The age of deception didn't end. It just changed clothes. Today, the lies are softer, wrapped in green labels, gentle words, mindfulness slogans. They come through glowing screens instead of cigarette ads, in hashtags instead of headlines. Cleanse your body. Boost your immunity. Balance your energy. Biohack your brain. It sounds harmless. It feels hopeful. But behind those words lies the same old machinery. Billions of dollars built on the universal fear of getting sick, getting old, or simply being human. The language has evolved. The psychology hasn't. What makes medical deception so enduring is that it never needs to invent a new weakness. It just learns how to speak to the ones we already have. Fear of disease. Fear of imperfection. Fear of uncertainty. We like to believe we're rational, that we choose based on evidence, not emotion. But human beings are not data processors. We're storytellers. We don't just want health. We want meaning. That's why the placebo lifestyle, supplements, detoxes, miracle diets thrives. It gives us the illusion of control in a world that constantly reminds us how little control we have. And sometimes, even when we know something might be a lie, we cling to it, because it's the only thing that makes the chaos feel manageable. But deception in medicine doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it's internal, woven into the system itself. A 2020 review by the BMJ estimated that up to 85% of all medical research is wasted, either because of poor design, selective reporting, or unpublished results. That means the science we rely on may only reflect a fraction of the full truth. In hospitals, doctors often face pressure to meet targets, prescribe certain drugs, follow guidelines set not by evidence, but by economics. Even well-meaning physicians can become part of a structure that hides complexity under efficiency. And patients, overwhelmed, exhausted, surrender their judgment to a system that rarely rewards curiosity. The deception isn't just in products or policies. It's in the quiet erosion of trust. One delayed disclosure, one missing study, one too quick diagnosis at a time. Some of the greatest lies in medicine were told not out of malice, but out of ambition. The dream to cure can become the hunger to control. The desire to help can morph into the need to be right. That's how Ewan Cameron, once a respected psychiatrist, justified erasing people's memories in the name of mental health. That's how Elizabeth Holmes convinced the world her machine could revolutionize blood testing. That's how generations of doctors endorsed cigarettes, sugar, opioids, and miracle tonics, because they couldn't afford to be wrong. Progress is addictive, too. And when progress meets profit, truth becomes negotiable. Still, it's too easy to blame the industry, the government, the media. Because the final piece of this story, the part no one wants to admit, is us. We want the easy fix. We want the guarantee. We want to believe that science has become magic, that suffering is optional, that health can be bought, optimized, measured, perfected. And so we click buy. We swallow the pill. We trust the voice with the calm background music. We call it self-care, but sometimes it's just self-deception in a prettier bottle. None of this means medicine is evil. Without it, most of us wouldn't be alive to doubt it. Vaccines, antibiotics, surgery. These are miracles built on centuries of failure and courage. But somewhere along the way, the distance between helping and selling grew thin. And the question changed from what heals to what sells as healing. That's the quiet danger of our time. When truth becomes optional, hope becomes currency. Yet there's another truth, smaller, quieter, harder to market. Real medicine isn't glamorous. It's slow. It's uncertain. It demands patience and humility. It requires doctors to say, "I don't know," and patients to accept that not every pain has a product. That's not an easy story to sell, but it's the only one worth telling. Because health isn't something we buy. It's something we build through sleep, food, care, connection, and honesty. The real miracle of medicine isn't in its machines or molecules. It's in the courage to tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient. So maybe the greatest medical deception of all isn't a pill or a program. It's the belief that truth and comfort can live in the same sentence. They rarely do. But in the space between them, in the hesitation of a doctor, in the skepticism of a patient, in the questions we keep asking, something honest still survives. And maybe that's enough. You've just walked through a century of healing and deception, stories that shaped how we live, trust, and survive. And maybe, somewhere in all of this, you found a reflection of yourself. The vitamins on your shelf, the things you once believed, the questions you never asked. The truth is, we've all been deceived at some point, not because we're foolish, but because we're human. And being human means searching, doubting, learning together. If these stories made you pause, even for a moment, then let that pause be the beginning of something. Ask questions. Look closer. Talk about what you've heard tonight. Because the more we speak about what's hidden, the harder it becomes for lies to survive. And if you want to keep walking through stories like this, quiet stories about truth, science, and the fragile beauty of being human, you can stay. Follow this channel. Join the next chapter. Not for entertainment, but for understanding. Because truth, when shared, heals. You've walked through a century of lies disguised as medicine. Stories of hope, profit, pain, and survival. Some of them felt distant, locked in history. Others were much closer, in the vitamins we swallow, the drinks we detox with, the pills we trust, the blue liquid we swish every morning. And maybe, somewhere along this journey, you realize something quietly uncomfortable. That deception in medicine isn't always out there. Sometimes it lives in us, in the things we choose to believe, in the comfort we buy when truth feels too heavy to hold. But here's the strange and beautiful part. Awareness itself is healing. The moment you start asking questions about what you eat, what you take, what you trust, the moment you stop accepting things just because they've always been said that way, you begin the real kind of medicine, the one made of thought, not product. If this series made you pause, even for a moment, let that pause mean something. Share it. Talk about it. Let someone else know that truth still matters, even when it's uncomfortable. And now, if you're still awake, press like, subscribe, and leave a comment below, just to let me know you're still here. If your eyes are heavy, then close them. Breathe. Relax. Sleep well. You've done enough for today. Good night.